Hey friends, happy 5-2 week. Today I have with me Amy Fanta, the new, right, Amy? The newer executive director of Camp Restore in Detroit. Amy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, hey, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Amy, you are you're taking the baton from your dad and your mom. They're like, "Hey, it's time to retire. We're out of here." And so today we're going to be talking about even some of that handoff, and then what the ministry looks like. But before we hit record, you were telling me, and this is just a fascinating thing because I think we all need to hear this kind of as a COVID reality for a number of families. You and your family were RVing for the last few years or whatever.
Yeah. So, God has different plans than we all have, and God's plans look entirely different than we expect them sometimes. So, we actually ended up in California for a couple of years, which it's a long story, but that's how I actually ended up being able to lead Camp Restore and to take on more responsibility at Camp Restore. Because when we were closer, I had a full-time job that I couldn't leave and all sorts of other things. So God has different plans than us. So we were in California and COVID hit, and our life wasn't what we wanted it to be. My husband wasn't ever home. He was in China more than he was in the United States. And so we took the opportunity to get in an RV, and we've been traveling the country the last 2 years, and it's been pretty phenomenal. It's also allowed us to be at Camp Restore a lot. My family's moved on to campus for a few weeks at a time and really gotten to know people, and it's really been growing and a lot of fun.
Well, and so that people understand Camp Restore, because we were a part of, we helped your parents and their team launch Camp Restore, and y'all went public with that in about 2017. But real quickly, explain to people, what is Camp Restore and what does it do? What's its model?
So our mission is to share the love of God by restoring hope, home, and community in the 9th precinct of Detroit. We do that. We follow the lead of the community. We say, hey, where are you at right now? And how can we help in that endeavor, right? A lot of organizations are needs-based. For example, Camp Restore New Orleans, when they started, there was an immediate need. People's homes were gone. People's clothes were gone. People's food was gone, right? So here's clothing, here's food. We're going to help you with your house. We're asset-based, which means we say, what good is already happening here and how can we come alongside and do the same thing? And the way we do that is we have dorms and a campus, and we bring in volunteers from throughout the United States, and we connect volunteers to projects that are in the works. And we have some really awesome projects that are in the works. Pre-COVID, they were more one-offs, like, hey, I have a ceiling that's falling in. Can you please come help do my ceiling? This house, it's so full of blight, you can't even tell it's there. We find a lot of sidewalks. It's pretty crazy. Sidewalks that people that have lived there for 10, 20 years don't know there's a sidewalk underneath the blight. And we legitimately unearthed sidewalks. And in COVID, some of our organizations, because they knew volunteers were coming and because this new hope was there, that there's this greater future, they applied for some pretty large grants. And so we're assisting with those projects, doing a playground at a school and cleaning up a business corridor and all sorts of really great things.
You know what? I just love, I was just with the team, Texas A&M Lutheran Student Ministry team. They're relaunching. I was with them over the last few days. And when they came to this statement of what they do, and to hear you say, we restore hope, home, and community, right? Those were the three things you said in the 9th precinct of Detroit. What I love about that is it's very focused. You know where you work, where you don't work, and you know what you're doing. And obviously, knowing your ministry, that hope, that center, the center to that hope is Jesus and the mercy and the compassion that he brings to people.
Yes. A wise man says in his trainings, you can't, what is it? Something about the ocean.
You can't boil the ocean.
Exactly.
A wise man. Okay, I'll. Oh, this. So tell me. So y'all, you have what I also love about it. because y'all bring people in. You said dorms, which in our listeners, they may think, oh, well, they've got dorms. Tell me what really is, though, when you say dorms and facility. What was that? What is that?
Okay, so it's actually another way that God has bigger plans than us, right? So because Mount Calvary Lutheran Church is actually celebrating their 100-year anniversary
Wow.
this coming weekend. Yep. And so about 12 years, I think it was, before Camp Restore started, they had to shut down their school. A fire marshal came in. It wasn't because they didn't have enough money. It wasn't because they didn't have enough students. None of that. A fire marshal came in and said, you can't have kindergarten on the third floor. Sorry. It's against fire code and that's not going to work. And so at that point, they didn't have the funds to completely shift, kindergarten to an appropriate level in their school all around. So they had to close, and they were really, really sad about it. Maybe it wasn't, I'm not sure the timing, but it was before we came. But then when Camp Restore New Orleans came around, because at that point in time, they were turning away volunteers, and they said, hey, we don't want to turn away volunteers. We want to have someplace else to funnel these volunteers. Who would like to host this ministry? And Mount Calvary had the building and they had the facilities. So those old kindergarten classrooms are now dorm rooms. So we have bunk beds up there. Hey, but our mattresses are nice and comfortable because Art Van donated really comfortable mattresses.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah, and people bring their own sheets and blankets and towels. There's been churches have worked really hard to make it a really as comfortable as can be space. So we have a nice lounge that teams hang out in and eat in. And so that, yes, those are our dorms.
Well, and again, this is a great example. You said earlier, you're asset based. For us to say, okay, what resources has God given us, right? And then asset based, what resources has He put in the community that we can partner with and bring to bear in this new work of His. And so, what I want people to hear is that Camp Restore didn't go into this going like, oh, we've got all the resources we need. Not at all. What y'all did and what you continue to do is you brought the leadership and the passion and the heart of compassion to bear, but then God brings those resources around you.
Absolutely. All the time. Every time we turn around and go, how is that going to happen? Somehow it does. We pray a lot and it happens. God has plans.
Well, what plans do you have right now, Amy, as you look forward? Because, COVID, I'm sure COVID impacted you like it's impacted every nonprofit. But what do you see going forward with Camp Restore?
That's a really great question. We were actually having some of those conversations this morning. So for starters, we had to suspend for an entire year because we have dorms, right? We bring people in, we bring people together. We couldn't do that. And that was actually a community decision also, not just a government decision. Our community was pretty highly impacted by COVID, and everybody said, we love this ministry. We love our volunteers. We love our campers. If something happens that we pass COVID or something, this might be the end of Camp Restore. So to protect our community and to protect Camp Restore, we're simply going to shut down. And we stayed shut down until the community approached us again and said, hey, we're ready. Let's go. Right. And that was really impactful to us too, to know how big of an impact
they saw y'all, when you were gone, right? We always ask this, if you were to leave, would the community notice and what would be missing? And they realized, hey, we need you back at this stage.
Right. But it was also really healthy because we did all of our 5-2 trainings at the beginning, right? And we started very intentionally, but then you get going, right? And ministry starts happening and you're so busy, and 9/10 of the time you're putting out fires or bringing in campers or life, right? And so in that year, it was really great because Zoom calls started happening. So more people started being able to be involved, and we really grew our relationships. And we grew our community leadership and we grew our community base. And so I actually was having a dinner the other night and we said, okay, we're going to have an in-person dinner inside. We're all excited. We invited, I think, 7 to 9 people to the dinner.
Are
And
these
I had to
community, these were community leaders, or who were they?
we had a little bit of a mix. We had a couple construction people coming to visit the campus. And then I had invited a couple community leaders to come really talk to our construction crew about this is what we want and this is what we're hopeful for. And really our community leaders give the best campus tour anyway, because everybody's so excited about everything going on that if somebody's there other than me, I'm like, hey, you better just talk, right?
Yep.
So I had to call back. We had 40 people at the dinner.
Oh my, that's awesome. That is so cool.
Right. And there were people we still didn't even invite that I feel bad now that we didn't invite. I didn't even invite them. Wow. So really we grew a lot in COVID, and that has kind of asked the question, where are we going from here? Right.
Wow.
So, and there's so much happening. For one, we're really starting to grow our local base of volunteers also, which is really phenomenal, because before we were seen as just bringing in people from the outside. We have those dorms, right? People that come for a week or come for a weekend or things like that. And we're really starting to grow our local base of volunteers. So that's been really great. We're really starting to grow our community base of volunteers. So we had this idea that we're here to serve the community, but community members started to say, well, wait, how do I serve too?
Right.
And that question really started coming up before COVID. I mean, we definitely have leadership roles, right? We have community members on our board, everything we do is community led. But when people just come and say, how do I volunteer tomorrow? We didn't really have an answer. Right?
I want to contribute of myself to this effort. And again, I want to emphasize this point to people that what's happening with you is you went from saying, in a sense, here's the slice of what we do. But as you sit and listen, and then during COVID, God gave you all the wisdom to pull back and think and pray and interact. And now all of a sudden, it's like he's saying, I want Camp Restore to be the leader in really almost curating ministries and coordinating and being bigger than what you originally thought you were going to be, in a bigger stream.
Right. I've even ended up going back to school because I said, wait, this was small. Now this is turning very large.
Wow. That's
awesome.
That is so cool. Yeah. That is so cool.
It really is. It really is. And so, I forgot where I was going with that. What did you ask?
I was just wanted to know where you're going in the future, and you were saying.
Yeah. Well, and so now some interesting things have happened. We've had some staff turnover, and the person who is the director of camp itself, right? Feet on the ground, day to day, campers come in and she leads it. She was out on maternity leave. And we had an unexpected group of campers. We thought we were okay for while she was gone. And so there was a little bit of panic. I was planning on coming in and leading that group, and then I was unable to, and then she was on maternity leave. And it was the coolest experience ever, because it was the best weekend of campers we could have, because the community just showed up. Everybody from the community showed up and just led the week, right? I mean, Sandra was there. She gave tours. She took them to all their work sites. Maisha cooked breakfast, did the lunch shopping. Carla is our cook for the community for dinners. George came and made sure they were in the tool shed and had projects. And it was just this outpouring. And it's really shifted, again, a lot of what we're doing, because now we're saying, okay, we need to hand over a lot of leadership within the community. And it's really, we did an interview similar to this with, for Camp Restore with a community member. And we said, why does it matter how an organization enters a community, right? Why does it matter that that's done intentionally and that you don't come in and say, I have the solutions, let's get to work. And it was really great, because she went to start to answer the question, and then she paused, and then she said, wait, you don't think you're strangers in this community, right? Like, you know, your community members, right? And like, that was just so cool to say, we're here and we're part of this now.
Wow. Oh,
So
yeah, we will definitely play this video over and over for people because and again, it's just so neat knowing your dad so well. And I remember when I first met him, we were at a pastor's gathering, I was speaking, and he spoke up and stood up from his table, and he had this idea, about helping this area of Detroit, and to see it now, 4 or 5 years in, as he's passed the baton, and he's passing it so well, and for it to now grow, and it's sustainable in volunteers, it's sustainable. Anytime you're sustainable in volunteers, you're going to be more and more sustainable financially as well. And then and for you to say, hey, I've got to go learn more because this thing is like bigger than what I thought it was going to be. But your passion and your heart, it's just so wonderful. So wonderful. I can't thank you enough. Obviously, as you bring Jesus to people through serving them, through loving on them, it's just a joy to watch, just a joy to see.
well, thanks. I always do throw in there when somebody talks about my dad and how he threw the baton to me, right? I always make sure people know it's not just straight nepotism. My dad
No.
is my biggest supporter. He's my biggest supporter and my biggest naysayer at the same time.
I just, when you and I were on the call with him a while back, you were like, no, dad. And, dad's like constantly saying things about, well, I don't know if that's going to work, Amy, and you're like, so he's a balanced voice with you.
He does. It was at a board meeting. He said, okay, I'm ready to step down. And he said, I'm not sure who you want to come after me to succeed me. I think Amy's probably the clear choice here, but I'm going to step out now. And somebody else said, well, maybe we should talk about doing it for an interim. And the two community leaders on our board, one of them, they had masks, it was COVID, like ripped off their mask and said, no, the only option is Amy. And so it was really great and really came with a lot of community support.
Wow.
So that was really great.
Could you give us one story in wrapping up? Is there somebody in particular you just remember that Restore Detroit really made a difference in their lives and brought Jesus, to bear in a new way?
Right. Well, we've done two activities recently that really stood out to me and has been really awesome. So the biggest thing we do, we bring Christ through our actions, through our words, through our actions, through forming relationships and bringing hope. This is an area that has suffered a lot of disinvestment. They've had a lot of people leave. And even recently, as I've been taking these classes, I've come across a lot more people saying, oh, you work on the East Side, like there's no hope for the East Side. Oh. And it just really, it took my breath away. It really spoke deeply. So just bringing that hope back and that hope of Christ and that hope of a future, both here on earth and, in God's kingdom. So we, somebody called and they said, hey, we're wondering if you can bring a group to us next year or, this 2022 season. And I said, sure. And they said, we have to tell you what happened last year. They said, your group came and they did the work and we were so sad because our community members didn't show up, right? Your group was great, but our community just didn't show up. And she said, so it was good. But she said, but the weirdest thing happened. The next week, somebody else came out and cleaned up their yard. And then the week after that, somebody else came up and cleaned up their yard. And now we have this great group of community members that gets together regularly and we're cleaning up and we're getting together. And then she asked us not only to come back and do a spring cleanup, but she asked them the following weekend, she'd like the same people that do that cleanup to come to a community barbecue and to hide eggs and to do some events and do some things with the kids. And so now it's a full year later. And in that moment, we didn't necessarily see any change other than the physical cleanliness of the yard, right? But now we have this connection with this community group and we get to send a whole team in that's going to do an entire event and share God's love. And they're going to hide Easter eggs and do all sorts of things and share God's love in that way, which is just really amazing to me.
Oh, I mean, that is
Um,
so neat, just to see the multiplying impact of what you're doing. For those of you who are starting ministries or you're early on, keep this story in mind that it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And most of us, we overestimate what we can do in 1 year. We underestimate what we could do in 3 years. And here you're hearing a ministry that's been around for 5 years, and even with COVID, it's now just ramping up to a whole new level by the grace of God. Amy Fanta, thank you so much. Thank you for being a wonderful executive director of Restore Detroit. Thank you for carrying that baton well, and God be with you as you do.
Only by the grace of God. Thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.